Welcome, dear learners. We are going to deal with the topic of religion in modern science in order to understand the concept of religion from the perspective of sociology. In this lecture, a general outline for the concept of religion and science, interaction between science and religion, the scientific study of religion, science and religion in various religions are discussed here. As objective of this lecture, learners will enable to understand the concept of religion and science, to demand that the learners be aware of the science and its role in religion and vice versa. To take an active part in the course for the purpose of deeper understanding religion in modern science. Shall we go to the topic? The relationship, between science and religion has typically been characterized as one of conflict, especially on the issue of origins, means creation versus evolution. The historical reality is that science and religion have more often been complementary to each other, and the relationship has been dynamic. Science and religion are both important facets of modern life, and many of the questions in this series deal with issues that are at the intersection of science and religion. The purpose of this unit is to expose participants various ways that others have categorized science and religion, and to provide some strategies for evaluating the big questions of science and religion. Since the 1960s, scholars in theology, philosophy, history, and the sciences have studied the relationship between science and religion. Science and religion is a recognized field of study with dedicated journals, academic chairs, and scholarly societies. Most of its authors are theologians, philosophers with an interest in science, or scientists with long-standing interests in religion, some of whom are also ordained clergy. The systematic study of science and religion started in the 1960s with authors such as Ian Barber and Thomas F. Torrance, who challenged the prevailing view that science and religion were either at war or indifferent to each other. Barber's issues in Science and Religion in 1966 set out several enduring themes of the field, including a comparison of methodology and theory in both fields. Zygon, the first specialist journal on science and religion, was also founded in 1966. Peter Harrison in 1998 challenged the warfare model by arguing that Protestant theological conceptions of nature and humanity helped to give rise to science in the 17th century. Peter Bowler drew attention to a broad movement of liberal Christians and evolutionists in the 19th and 20th centuries who aimed to reconcile evolutionary theory with religious belief. In the 1990s, the Vatican Observatory and the Center for Theology and the Natural Sciences co-sponsored a series of conferences on divine action and how it can be understood in the light of various contemporary sciences. The field has presently diversified so much that contemporary discussions on religion and science tend to focus on specific disciplines and questions. Rather than ask if religion and science, broadly speaking, are compatible, productive questions focus on specific topics. For example, Buddhist modernists have argued that Buddhist theories about the self that no self, and Buddhist practices such as mindfulness, meditation are compatible and are corroborated by neuroscience. In the contemporary public sphere, a prominent interaction between science and religion concerns evolutionary theory and creationism, intelligent design. However, even if one were to focus on the reception of evolutionary theory, the relationship between religion and science is complex. For instance, in UK, scientists, clergy, and popular writers, the so-called modernists, sought to reconcile science and religion during the late 19th and early 20th century, whereas the US saw the rise of a fundamentalist opposition to evolutionary thinking. Another prominent offshoot of the discussion on science and religion is the new atheist movement, with authors such as Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, and Christopher Hitchens. They argue that public life, including government, education, and policy, should be guided by rational argument and scientific evidence, and that any form of supernaturalism, especially religion, but also astrology, has no place in public life. They treat religious claims such as the existence of God as testable scientific hypothesis. This entry will focus on the relationship between religious and scientific ideas as rather abstract philosophical positions rather than as practices. However, this relationship has a large practical impact on the lives of religious people and scientists, including those who are both scientists and religious believers. Sociological literatures indicate the complexity of these interactions, among others, how religious scientists conceive of this relationship. Now we will move to the next segment, interaction between science and religion. Several typologies probe the interaction between science and religion. For example, Mihail Stenmark in 2004 distinguishes between three views: the independence view, the contact view, and a union of the domains of science and religion. Within these views, Mihail recognizes further subdivisions. Example, contact can be in the form of conflict or harmony. The most influential taxonomy of the relationship between science and religion remains Bauber's conflict, independence, dialogue, and integration. Subsequent authors, as well as Bauber himself, have refined and amended this taxonomy. The conflict model holds that science and religion are in perpetual and principal conflict. It relies heavily on two historical narratives: the trial of Galileo and the reception of Darwinism. The vast majority of authors in the science and religion fields is critical of the conflict model and believes it is based on a shallow and partisan reading of historical record. While the conflict model is at present a minority position, some have used philosophical argumentation or have carefully re-examined historical evidence such as the Galileo trial to argue for his model. The independence model holds that science and religion explore separate domains that ask distinct questions. Stephen Jay, developed an influential independence model with his NOMA principle, means non-overlapping magisteria. The lack of conflict between science and religion arises from a lack of overlap between their respective domains of professional expertise. One obvious problem with the independence model is that if religion were barred from making any statement of fact, it would be difficult to justify its claims of value and ethics. Moreover, religions do seem to make empirical claims. For example, that Jesus appeared after his death, or that the early Hebrews passed through the parted waters of the Red Sea. The dialogue model proposes a mutualistic relationship between religion and science. Unlike independence, it assumes a common ground between both fields, perhaps in their presuppositions, methods, and concepts. Creations as a product of God's free actions is also contingent, so the laws of nature cannot be learned through a priori thinking, which prompts the need for empirical investigation. The integration model is more extensive in its unification of science and theology, means religion. It uses interpretations of results from the natural sciences as premises in its arguments. While integration seems attractive, especially to theologians, it is difficult to do justice to both the scientific and religious aspects of given domain, especially given their complexities. However, it shows obstacles for the integration model to become a live option in the broader community of theologians and philosophers who want to remain affiliated to a specific religious community without transgressing its boundaries. The scientific study of religion. The science and religion are closely interconnected in the scientific study of religion, which can be traced back to 17th century natural histories of religion. Natural historians attempted to provide naturalistic explanations for human behavior and culture, including religion and morality. Hume's Natural History of the Religion in 1757 is perhaps the best known philosophical example of natural historical explanation of religious belief. It traces the origins of polytheism, which Hume thought was the earliest form of religious belief, to ignorance about natural causes combined with fear and apprehension about the environment. By deifying aspects of the environment, early humans tried to persuade or bribe the gods, thereby gaining a sense of control. In the 19th century, early 20th century, authors from newly emerging scientific disciplines such as anthropology, sociology, and psychology examined the purported naturalistic roots of religious beliefs. In anthropology, this positivist idea influenced cultural evolution, theoretical framework that sought to explain cultural change using universal patterns. The underlying supposition was that all cultures evolve and progress along with same trajectory. Cultures with differing religious views were explained as being in different stages of their development. For example, E.B. Tylor in 1871 regarded animism as the earliest form of religious belief. James Fraser's Golden Bough in 1890 is somewhat unusual within this literature, as he saw commonalities between magic, religion, and science. Though he proposed a linear progression, he also argued that a proto-scientific mindset gave rise to magical practices, including the discovery of regularities in nature. Cultural evolutionist models dealt poorly with religious diversity and with the complex relationships of between science and religion across cultures. Many authors proposed that religion was just a stage in human development which would eventually be superseded. For example, Social theorists such as Karl Marx and Max Weber proposed versions of the secularization thesis, the view that religion would decline in the face of modern technology, science, and culture. Functionalism was another theoretical framework that sought to explain religion. Functionalists did not consider religion to be a stage in human cultural development that would eventually be overcome. They saw it as a set of social institutions that served important functions in the societies they were part of. For example, the sociologist Emil Durkheim argued that religious beliefs are social glue that helps to keep societies together. Sigmund Freud and other early psychologists aimed to explain religion as the result of cognitive dispositions. For example, Freud saw religious beliefs as an illusion, a childlike yearning for a fatherly figure. He also considered oceanic feeling, a feeling of limitlessness and of being connected with the world, a concept he derived from the French author Romain Rolland, as one of the origins of religious belief. He thought this feeling was a remnant of an infant's experience of the self prior to being burned off the breast. William James was interested in the psychological roots and the phenomenology of religious experiences, which he believed were the ultimate source of all institutional religions. From the 1920s onward, the scientific study of religion became less concerned with grand unifying narratives and focused more on particular religious traditions and beliefs. Anthropologists such as Evans Pritchard and Bronislaw Malinowski no longer relied exclusively on second-hand reports, usually of poor quality and from distorted sources, but engaged in serious fieldwork. Their ethnographies indicated that cultural evolutionism was a defective theoretical framework and that religious beliefs were more diverse than was previously assumed. They argued that religious beliefs were not the result of ignorance of naturalistic mechanisms. For instance, Evans Pritchard in 1937 noted that Azadeh were well aware that houses could collapse because termites ate away at their foundations, but they still appealed to witchcraft to explain why a particular house collapsed at a particular time. Psychologists and sociologists of religion also began to doubt that religious beliefs were rooted in irrationality, psychopathology, and other atypical psychological states as James and other early psychologists had assumed. Psychologists of religion have made increasingly fine-grained distinction between types of religiosity, including extrinsic religiosity, being religious as means to an end, for instance, getting the benefits of being a member of a social group, and intrinsic religiosity. Psychologists and sociologists study religiosity as an independent variable with an impact on, for instance, health, criminality, sexuality, socio-economic profile, and social networks. A recent development in the scientific study of religion is the cognitive science of religion, which means CSR. This is a multidisciplinary field with authors from, among others, developmental psychology, anthropology, philosophy, and cognitive psychology. It differs from other scientific approaches to religion in its presupposition that religion is not a purely cultural phenomenon. Rather, authors in CSR hold that religion is the result of ordinary, early developed, and universal human cognitive processes, science and religion in various religions. As noted, most studies on the relationship between science and religion have focused on science and Christianity, with only a small number of publications devoted to other religious traditions. Since science makes universal claims, it is easy to assume that its encounter with other religious traditions. To give a sense of this diversity, this section provides a bird's eye view of science and religion in 5 major world religions: Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Judaism. Christianity is an Abrahamic monotheistic religion, currently the religion with the most believers. It developed in the first century, means the Common Era, out of Judaism. Christians adhere to asserted revelations described in a series of canonical texts, which include the Old Testament, which comprises text inherited from Judaism, and the New Testament, which contains the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which means the narratives on the life of teaching of Jesus, as well as events and teachings of the early Christian churches and Revelation, a prophetic book on the end times. Christian authors in the field of science and religion continue to debate through various publications. Authors have attempted to integrate science and religion, making integration a highly popular view on the relationship between science and religion. These authors tend to interpret findings from the sciences, such as evolutionary theory or Chaos theory, in a theological light, using established theological models such as classical theism or the doctrine of creation. John Hart in 1995 argues that the theological view of kenosis, means self-emptying of God in creation, anticipates scientific findings such as evolutionary theory, a self-emptying God, which means who limits God's self, who creates a distinct and autonomous world, makes a world with internal self-coherence, with a self-organizing universe as the result. Next, Islam. Islam is a monotheistic religion that emerged in the 7th century following a series of purported revelations to the Prophet Muhammad. The term Islam also denotes geopolitical structures such as caliphats and empires, which were founded by Muslim rulers from the 7th century onward, including the Umayyad, Abbasid, and Ottoman caliphates. Additionally, it refers to a culture which flourished within these political and religious contexts with its own philosophical and scientific tradition. The defining characteristic of Islam is belief in one God, means Allah, who communicates through prophets including Adam, Abraham, and Muhammad. The two major branches of Islam, Sunni and Shia, are based on a dispute over the succession of Muhammad. As the second largest religion in the world, Islam shows a wide variety of beliefs. Core creedal views include the oneness of God, the view that there is only one undivided God who created and sustains the universe, prophetic revelation, in particular to Muhammad and on afterlife. Beyond this, Muslims disagree on a number of doctrinal issues. The relationship between Islam and science is complex. Today, predominantly Muslim countries such as the United Arab Emirates enjoy high urbanization and technological development, but they still underperform in common metric of scientific research, such as publications in leading journals and number of citations per scientist. compared to other regions outside of the West, such as India and China. This contemporary lack of scientific prominence is remarkable given that the Islamic world far exceeded European cultures in the range of quality of its scientific knowledge between approximately the 9th and the 15th century. Excelling in domains such as mathematics, algebra and geometry, trigonometry in particular, astronomy, optics and medicine. These domains of knowledge are commonly referred to as Arabic science to distinguish them from the pursuits of science that arose in West. Rather providing the term of Arabic science, it is more accurate of providing the term of science in the Islamic world. Many scientists in the Islamic world were polymaths, is commonly regarded as one of the most significant innovators, not only in philosophy but also in medicine and astronomy. The Canon of Medicine, a medical encyclopedia, was a standard textbook in universities across Europe for many centuries after that publication. Al-Farabi, a political philosopher from Damascus, also investigated music theory, science and mathematics. Omar Khayyam achieved lasting fame in disparate domains such as poetry, astronomy, geography and mineralogy. The Andalusian Ibn Rushd wrote on medicine, physics, astronomy, psychology, jurisprudence, music and geography, next to developing a Greek-inspired philosophical theology. Hinduism. Hinduism is the world's third largest religion. The vast majority of Hindus live in India. Most others live in Nepal, Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia, with a significant diaspora in Western countries such as the United States. In contrast to the Abrahamic monotheistic religions, Hinduism does not always draw a sharp distinction between God and creation. While there are pantheistic and panentheistic views in Christianity, Judaism and Islam, these are minority positions. Many Hindus believe in a personal God and identity this God as immanent in creation. This view has ramifications for the science and the religion debate in that there is no sharp ontological distinction between creator and creature. Religious traditions originating on the Indian subcontinent, including Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism and Sikhism, are referred to as dharmic. Religious, philosophical points of view are referred to as darshana. Around the 6th, 5th century, the northern part of the Indian subcontinent experienced an extensive urbanization. In this context, medicine, means Ayurveda, became standardized. This period also gave rise to a wide range of heterodox philosophical schools, including Buddhism, Jainism and Sarvaha. The latter defended a form of metaphysical naturalism, denying the existence of gods or karma. The relationship between science and religion on the Indian subcontinent is complex in part because the dharmic religions and philosophical schools are so diverse. For example, Sarvaha proponents had a strong suspicion of inferential beliefs and rejected Vedic revelation and supernaturalism in general, instead favoring direct observation as a source of knowledge. Buddhism, like the other religious traditions survived in this country, encompasses many views and practices. The principal forms of Buddhism that exist today are Theravada and Mahayana. Theravada is the dominant form of Buddhism of Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia. It traditionally refers to monastic and textual lineages associated with the study of the Pali Buddhist canon. Mahayana refers to a movement that likely began roughly 4 centuries after the Buddha's death. It became the dominant form of Buddhism in East and Central Asia. It includes Chan or Zen and also Tantric Buddhism, which today is found mostly in Tibet, through East Asian forms also exist. Buddhism originated in the historical figure of Buddha, historically Gautama Buddha or Siddhartha Gautama. His teaching centered on ethics as well as metaphysics, encapsulated in the 4 noble truths on suffering and its origin in human desires, and the noble eightfold path: right view, right aspiration, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. To end suffering and to break the cycle of rebirths, culminating in reaching nirvana. Substantive metaphysical teachings include belief in karma, the no self, and the cycle of rebirth. As a response to colonialist attitudes, modern Buddhists since the 19th century have often presented Buddhism as harmonious with science. The argument is roughly that since Buddhism doesn't require belief in metaphysical substantive entities such as God, the soul, or the self, unlike, for example, Christianity, Buddhism should be easily compatible with the factual claims that scientists make. We could thus expect the dialogue and integration view to prevail in Buddhism. The next one is Judaism. Judaism is one of the 3 major Abrahamic monotheist traditions encompassing a range of beliefs and practices that express a covenant between God and the people of Israel. Central to both Jews' practice and beliefs is the study of texts, including the written Torah, the Tanakh, sometimes called Hebrew Bible, as the oral law of rabbinic Judaism compiled in such works like the Talmud. There is also a corpus of esoteric, mystical interpretations of biblical texts, the Kabbalah, which has influenced Jewish work on relationship between science and religion. Jewish thinkers have made substantive theoretical contribution to the relationship between science and religion, which differ in interesting respects from those seen in the literature written. Jewish religious scholars have examined how science might influence religious beliefs and vice versa. Rather than a unified response, we see a spectrum of philosophical views, especially since the 19th century and early 20th century, as Shoy Sherry surveys. Jewish scholars in the early 20th century accepted biological evolution but were hesitant about Darwinian natural selection as the mechanism. This lecture would have certainly made the point that all of us have our own worldview and that there will be variation among scientists and people of faith in their worldviews. At the very least, this should make us realize that we may not have the complete truth since most others disagree with us in some aspect of our worldview. Dear learners, so far we have discussed the topic of religion in modern science. In this lesson, in order to understand the concept of religion from the perspective of sociology, the following areas have been covered. In this session, they are in this lecture, general outline, the concept of religion and science, interaction between science and religion, the scientific study of religion, then discuss about the science and religion in various religions. Dear, I hope you may have enjoyed this lecture. We will meet with another schedule. Thank you. All the best.